Sex ed teachers of Reddit, what is the stupidest question you've ever gotten? I'm not a physical ed teacher, English actually, but I have gotten a couple questions that made me do a double take. The one that sticks out the most was when two girls were arguing in my class. I got them to stop and asked what was going on. One girl answered, "Mr. Spodson, isn't it true that if the girl doesn't have an orgasm that they can't get pregnant?" Before I could answer, the other girl yells, "No, dumbass. The girl can get pregnant anytime a boy pees in here. I can't decide which is worse. That one girl was obviously being lied to by her inept, bumbling boyfriend, or that the other girl learned about fricking from Cartmen." I have gotten a lot of comments about a couple of typos. This seems to have upset a great many people because I am an English teacher. Therefore I am leaving them in with today's lesson. If the only flaw you can find with an argument is the spelling, you won't sound as clever as you think with your observation. I spent at least a minute or two wondering what the fact of you being English had to do with anything. I am not a smart man. Not a physical ed teacher, but was a student in a physical ed class years ago. We had a question box where anyone who was shy could drop a question in and have it answered by the teacher. Every day the box came around and I wrote down, "How do you beat your meat, Zach?" My name's not Zach, but the donghead who sat next to me was. He got yelled at almost daily. Not a teacher, but still relevant. In high school I had a friend who really wanted to frick but also thought protection was just super inconvenient. One day, he was bragging to me about how he lost his virginity. Not wanting him to reproduce, I asked him if he at least used protection, to which he replied, "No, we didn't need to. We were both virgins." When I asked why that mattered, he replied, "Nobody gets pregnant their first time. It's like a freeb. Anyway, she gets knocked up," and he concludes she must not have been a virgin since. You know, that's the only explanation. They break up and he starts screwing around with someone else. Thinking he finally learned his lesson, I ask him if he's at least using protection this time. And, once again, he says no. Baffled, I ask why he isn't, and he tells me they are just making sure she's on top because she can't get pregnant when she's on top because of gravity. TLDNR, he is paying oh so much child support and I'm left fighting back a Fasapum-induced aneurysm. My ex went to Bible college in Nebraska. Her roommate, Amy, had been homeschooled, and college at 19 was the first time she could interact with others while not with her parents. Like everyone else who sees this as 4 years to snag a husband or become an unmarriable spinster, she got boyfriends. One of the school activities was this group that went to schools and churches to sing song, do skits, and warn about heck all about not fricking. It was a bit vague. They never mentioned junk and biological drives. Instead it was about the devil tempting kids to be cool. Cool was demonstrated by kids that wore sunglasses and pretended to smoke, which led to fricking and heck. Amy started to show. It was obvious to everyone that she didn't just get her freshman 15, but had an obvious baby bump. They kept her in the group. Her "I'm not doing it" t-shirt was bulged way out. Eventually someone in the school confronted her. She had no idea that what she let one of her boyfriends do was frick. Her mother had told her babies come from seamen, so she was going to avoid sailors. It didn't click at all what message she was singing and acting out was all about. The boyfriend knew exactly what he was doing, knew she was pregnant, and had been making his rounds at that school for a while. Because she didn't know what fricking was, it took some asking to find out which boyfriend was responsible. Girls eager to marry a future minister will do anything to get that Mrs. degree in college. So there was a shotgun wedding at Thanksgiving. It was a huge deal and hush up because they would forgive anything that a person had done prior to attending that school. But once they're a person must be sin-free. The official word was that these two lovebirds were engaged for a year, despite them breaking up and both of them dating others. The mother was pretty far along and the baby was born almost a week after the wedding. It's actually ridiculous how much some people don't know these days. We assume with all the talk about fricking that everyone knows everything, but that's just not true. We could write questions on paper to remain anonymous. So my friend wrote, and I quote, "If gay guys like things going in their bum, do they get aroused when poo comes out of their bum?" Total troll mode. But it did result in our gym teacher saying "Goddamn it." If there are people in this group that have questions about fricking, please ask them, whether you are afraid to sound stupid or not. Fricking is a complicated thing sometime and the information one gets is not always correct. Not a question, but one time I was substituting for an 8th grade physical ed class. The teacher wanted me to show a focus on the family video. They are an extremely right-wing, opposite gender-phobic, anti-gay organization. Fortunately, the video described itself as the ultimate guide to teenage sex in the 90s. As this was about 2010, I told the students that, if any of them planned on fricking in the 90s, to pay attention to the video, otherwise I'll let them chill and ignore the terrible video. Not so much stupid as really sad. I've had people ask me if the pill will really work for them, since they were told by abstinence-only suckers that the pill doesn't work on women under 25 because their hormones are out of whack. I've known girls who got knocked up because they'd been told you can't get pregnant your first time. I don't think any of these people are stupid. They have been willfully misinformed their entire lives. It's beyond sad, and it absolutely disgusts me that my state refuses comprehensive physical ed and doesn't require that it be medically accurate. And that's just straight people. LGBT folks get absolutely no physical ed, because that would be encouraging the lifestyle. STD rates are sky high among gay people because no one ever sat them down and discussed the risks of fricking them. I find that very sad too, and now I really want to publish a very comprehensive physical ed book that even a child would understand, including diagrams, frequently asked questions and some slang terms. Science teacher was teaching about artificial insemination to year 7, explained that the sperm and the egg were put together in the petri dish. Well, how do they get the sperm after being a teacher for 7 years? I never expected such naivety. I tried to explain in less scientific terms, then I tried to explain scientifically. Still blank faces. Susie, subzonal intratesticular sperm extraction. Or tell them using a syringe. In 5th grade I asked what a mangina was because I heard it on the boondocks at my cousin's house. I got kicked out of the classroom and wasn't allowed back. It's something old Greg has. Next question. Obligatory. I'm not a physical ed teacher. A classmate asked how babies are made. He straight up didn't know. He thought it was done by kissing, and that the tongue had to play effective hockey to prevent the seed from fertilizing the egg, which was found in the stomach. This was 8th grade. I didn't really know what masturbation was until the 8th grade. I saw 2 kids making the jerk-off motion, finally put 2 and 2 together, and had a glorious evening. Ugh, this is making me really self-conscious since I was that ignorant kid. I didn't have a proper physical ed class until my freshman year of college because I went to religious private schools my whole life. I wasn't stupid, but there was a lot for me to learn. I once asked if it was safer to wear 2 condoms, and some loudmouthed trashy B openly laughed in my face in front of everyone. I never asked another question again in that class. Not a physical ed teacher, but when I was 22 my friend, who was slightly older, asked if a girl could get pregnant if a guy's semen genes came into contact with her. In an anonymous question box at the end, how do I stop watching anime P? I said that they should just not watch it. Not a physical ed teacher, but when I had to take physical ed in middle school another student asked the teacher how many Dixie cups could a girl fill up during her period. Not a stupid question. I've often wondered this myself. My brother was demonstrating the use of a condom on a corncob for his physical ed class. One student says, "How do I not make it hurt?" "What do you mean?" "Well, it seems like usually only my dong fits. It's hard to put in my balls too." Not a teacher, but I had my first physical ed class in 3rd grade. The principal was leading the discussion to a room full of boys. Principal, when the blood rushes to the dong it causes an erection. Student raises his hands. Principal calls on student. Student, yeah, we like to call those boners. Not a physical ed teacher, but there's never going to be an occasion like this. I worked for a pollster years ago, where we would call up people and ask them various surveys. Many of the surveys were various topics amalgamated, and once one of the topics was fricking, yep, high turn down rate, but we had to get our samples. The most fun question was plainly, would you describe yourself as straight, gay, or bi? This was the early zeros. No other choice. The secret of polls is that they often have a hidden no answer does not no choice that isn't read out loud but is there in case you need it. One man answers loudly, "I'm normal. I'm sorry sir." which one of the choices I read would you say that falls in? I said I was normal. That means normal. Now don't ask me again. Checks does not know. So yes, technically that guy went into the bin of people who don't know their physical orientation. If the survey is done over 1000 people, that's 0.1% of answers that are wrong. And a lady, am I what? Straight, gay, or bi? Well, I don't know. Let's see. I'm a woman. My husband is a man. That's 2 gender. So, B. Checks B. My physical ed class as a 6th grader ended after 5 minutes because some asked, does a tampon pop your cherry? The nurse teaching kicked us all out of the classroom. Me as a naive child had absolutely no clue what the question meant at all. And because she kicked us all out, it was years before I learned anything about freaking. I never did ask for clarification, but I remember leaving my physical ed class terrified and miserable because the teacher had talked about girls getting their period. One point she didn't mention, maybe because it seemed obvious, was when it would end. I left thinking that once I got my period, I would never ever stop bleeding. I was also devastated by the fact that this meant that I could never go swimming again. I covered physical ed for an 8th grade class one year. I got some wonderfully silly questions. The 3 that stand out are, if 2 people are freaking in a bathroom and the guy gets semen on the seat and a girl comes in later to use the bathroom, can she get pregnant? Apparently this is, by the way, a very common question. But the supervisor watching me at the time was impressed by my answer. First of all, no, because sperm won't live very long outside of the body. Besides that, when women use the bathroom they don't normally straddle the seat, so there's really be no way for the sperm to come in contact with her tea. A personal favorite was when the following exchange that happened between multiple students too fast for me to jump in. So wait, what are adult toys for? Wait, what's adult toy? You know, like a celeb. Oh, I have a celeb on my phone. Celeb on my phone boy was a favorite and managed to come up with the only question that took me aback. If you can't afford a condom, can you use something else like a paper bag? Really? Not even a plastic bag or a shower cap, but a paper bag? I'm not a woman, but I still cringe on the thought of being penetrated by something so dry and crinkly. I taught physical ed for years. I didn't think any question was stupid. I live in a society in which most of the kids I worked with weren't ever taught anything scientifically accurate about human physicality until they met me. I never told a kid that their question was stupid, and I never would. I couldn't expect them to ask intelligent questions when their parents told them that babies come from storks, and every other adult they have encountered told them that if they frick they will get herpes and die. So, to me, what's really stupid is how adults are so afraid to talk to young people about literally the most natural thing that humans do in order to survive as a species. All that being said, a lot of kids ask if you can get pregnant from fellatio. Not fully a teacher yet, but I had the phys ed teacher ask me to step in and field his anonymous physical ed questions while I was doing my practice teaching. Here were some of the highlights. Can I fit my fist into a pea? What does cum taste like? Asking for a friend. If I poke a boob with a pin, will boob juice come out? Is it cool to get a dong tattoo? Had a friend that got his wife pregnant but went to the doctors arguing with him saying that they were using the pill. Turns out that he was taking the pill instead of his wife. I had a kid ask me, dead serious, if special education kids were the result of pregnancies after fellatio led to the sperm being damaged by stomach acid before it got to the egg. I took a physical ed course at my college freshman year to fulfill a credit requirement. Some girl asked if you can get pregnant if a guy were to masturbate next to you in a pool because his swimmers swim, right? College physical ed. She was an adult. Maybe she was high. There are no stupid questions when it comes to ignorance. If the person truly doesn't know, then it's up to someone who does to show them the correct answer. You can't fault someone for wanting to learn. Everybody is born knowing nothing, so they can grow to learn everything. I disagree. Plenty of questions are stupid. That is an entirely different animal than the questioner being stupid. Not a physical ed teacher, but one guy I dated was this total hillbilly redneck kid and raised pigs with his dad. This whole time in which he's fricking other girls and was 18. thought that pregnancy worked like animals and that girls had to be in heat like animals to get pregnant, so he actually thought that only when girls were on their periods they could get pregnant. My other littler experience was a guy who was 16 who thought that the minute the dong went in the tea the girl was pregnant, and apparently his mom had told him that. I'm a stupid question asker. I didn't know that such a thing as a ball sack existed. I thought there were supposed to be just 2 little balls chilling down there. I'll bite. 6th grade I asked how would you know what hole to put it in. I thought they were all just uniform holes down there and you just have to know which. I like to think I've come a long way. Teacher says my class, okay girls, don't believe a boy if he says you won't get pregnant doing it this way or that way. There is no position where you will not get pregnant. Girl in the back, what about anal? Teacher, there is one position where you will not get pregnant. One time my friend asked the teacher if she'd ever had a threesome. She said yes. That teacher was my mom. Till I have never had a proper physical ed class. I took health as a freshman, but it just talked about STDs. BTW I live in Alabama if you didn't guess. Not a physical ed teacher, but I remember from middle school one guy deciding to be an butt in physical ed. Or maybe he really was curious. Hard to tell at that age sometimes. When the teacher was going over pregnancy, this kid raised his hand and asked if a woman frick a dog, would she have puppies? Everyone but the teacher had a laughing fit. I've been teaching for a few years and here are some of the gems. Student, should I wash my hands after I masturbate? Teacher, you should go wash your hands right now. Student, what does sperm taste like? Student, how come the sperm under the microscope isn't moving? Teacher, it's been preserved. Student, well where can I see some that's moving? Student, what does sperm smell like? Female student, how far up does a T go? Student, can someone have 2 Y chromosomes? Teacher, that would mean 2 sperm fused to make a baby. Student, so can it happen? My friends and I, in college, were talking about making a music for a freaking session playlist and one of my other friends chime in saying wouldn't you need a lot of songs, enough to last all night. He honestly believed that you could last an entire night while freaking. He also thought that whenever people said eat a girl out that they were talking about taking her out for dinner. When I was doing physical ed in 7th grade, someone asked pads, sticky side up or sticky side down. I later retold the story to my boyfriend. Even at 25, he was under the impression that they went sticky side up. Am I the only one here who came from a religious family that did talk about the excuse the pun, ins and outs of freaking? I mean, it helps that mum's a nurse and dad's a paramedic, but still, it's bloody ridiculous. Obligatory not a physical ed teacher but was planning on being one before I found out I'm chronically ill opener. I had amazing physical ed that was headed by a woman from something similar to Planned Parenthood. From a very young age, it helped empower me to get out of a terrible situation and get an abortion. Before I found out I was sick, and before mental illness and trauma set in, I wanted to become a feminist physical educator like her, working with young girls about consent and self-defense. A cause close to my heart. I routinely give physical advice to anyone who asks. 1. A guy can just touch his dong and boom babies all over the carpet, right? But girls can't do that. Can you explain that to me? I had to stop laughing before messaging her back to ask if she knew what a clitoris was. She did not and thought that looking at a diagram of a T would make her have lesbianic tendencies, which she didn't want. It took some convincing, but this woman had never felt physical pleasure in her life and was amazed that the clitoris was a thing. I also explained how semen worked and the entire bit. She had no idea and thought that babies were inside the dong and shot into the woman upon climax. 2. My friend told me that my boobs are smaller because my bra is pushing the milk back and that's why hippies have big boobs. I didn't even know what to say to this one and let my so take over. 3. I was told not to swallow because stomach acid dissolves the babies alive. Well, isn't that metal as frick? 4. With abortion, they take the baby and chop it up with a knife like on MasterChef into tiny little pieces to disguise that it's a fully formed mini baby in there and you can hear the bones like celery. It's wrong. I've had an abortion before and I still laughed at this mental image and had to explain fetal development and viability to them, as well as how abortions work. They refused to believe me. 5. My so had no idea how a C-section worked until I showed him a few videos. He then begged that when we have a baby, not to get one. I didn't plan on having a C-section because I have a huge fear of surgery while awake, but explained that it's totally safe to do and has been done in certain areas of the world for longer than modern medicine has existed. 6. Multiple people believed that the tea was abrasive like sand until it was aroused, or that it became loose after repeated use, so they spaced out their intercourse. A co-worker of mine overheard a female student tell her friend we don't have to use condoms because he tans. That kills the sperm. Not a physical ed teacher but a high school teacher. One of my students had heard that if you took earwax from your ear and put it near a girl's tea, that if she had an STD she would pull away from it, and if she didn't she wouldn't move. He wanted to know if this was true. I asked him to repeat the question like 3 times because I couldn't believe how dumb it was. I informed him of the many ways to test for STDs and that was not one of them. I was sitting in health class during the physical orientation unit in grade 12 when this chick, now we are grade 12 so we are all 17-19 years old, who was quite active in her private life, asked our health teacher, so does your doctor poke holes in your nipples to make the milk come out when you're pregnant? Dead silence in the class until this kid next to me says, are you retarded? My mom helped out with the physical ed when I was in 5th grade. A kid in a separate session raised his hand to answer the question, what's a wet dream? His answer, it's when you think you're gonna fart dry, but you fart wet. My parents once told me that my brother came to them in tears. It was because when he was playing with himself in the shower, some sticky white stuff came out. He was 11. He doesn't know I know, and it is the funniest thing I know about him, and my parents said it was difficult not to laugh and make him feel stupid for asking. Not in physical ed class but actually in a bachelor's nursing program at a major university. We were sitting in a huge lecture hall, and the nursing professor was talking about how probiotics help prevent yeast infections. She also suggested that nurses should teach females patients that yogurt was a good way to help prevent yeast infections. Then a female nursing student raised her hand and asked, how do you insert the yogurt without making a mess? If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.